Pleasure and desire and will. Pleasure we have in something just because, just because, and that creates a desire for that thing. Sometimes, though, will is even stronger than pleasure. A deep rooted, strong connection to something, someone creates a willfulness, if you will, that becomes stronger than any kind of pleasure you have from something. So in Hasidus, they teeter between the two ideas of which is more powerful. Usually, though, pleasure is more powerful, and it's what is the inner cause of a desire that we have for something. That's the usual case, not always. So there's divine pleasure that creates a will, a divine will. We see them as two separate entities because in us, we are a compound of things. In the divine, there's no compound. It's all one simplistic whole oneness. But you can't really fathom that. So we can't speak of it from God's perspective. We have to speak of it from our perspective and how we understand something. And we understand that pleasure and will are two separate entities. Sometimes the will is a powerful will that is stronger than any pleasure. But for the most part, it is pleasure that creates the desire, the will. So in the divine order of things, there's a pleasure there's a pleasure as an end in itself in divinity that creates from there, or not, I don't know, creates the right word, but that draws from there a divine will. And the divine will is the 613 commandments of the Torah. That's the divine will. Welcome to Tanya today. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from Chabad Zichron Kadesh in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We continue in the 29th letter. We need a new, soon to be made a new one. Can take from the hot water, Sharon. Just, yeah, put it back on for a moment. It'll take a moment to boil. Okay. So in this 29th letter, a very profound and deep mystical idea. And today we're going to focus in on how do we understand that the divine will of God should embrace a physical act of doing something. The divine will of God that's so beyond, and now it comes down into a menial act, not Forget about the intent. Just the act itself is meaningful. How so? I mean, just putting on tefillin, just lighting Shabbos candles, a physical act of lighting Shabbos candles, the physical act of eating something kosher, for a Jew, the physical act of observing Shabbos. How does that connect with the divine will? I mean, the divine will of God. We understand that. This is Chabad, so we want to have a deeper understanding of the divine will of God. It wants me to act in a certain way, not to have it. We're not talking about here the inner love and awesomeness that there is in connection to God. We're not talking about that. We're talking about not to suggest that shouldn't be, of course, but the primary thing is, just do it. Just do it. Do the mitzvah. So we need to understand this. So the supernal will of God, the Kabbalists refer to it as Keser Elyon. It is the supreme crown. It's a crown. Keser is the numeric value of 620. Chaf is 20, Tuf is 400, and Reish is 200. It gives you 620. Now, we've been speaking about 613 commandments. Now, all of a sudden, we got 620. The supreme crown, the will of God, is 620 because there's 613 biblical commandments and 7 rabbinic. 7 rabbinic. So that's 620. So what's going on over here? A crown in Hebrew, koiseres, is like the crown on top of a pillar, the crowning of the pillar, right? And what is a crown of a pillar? Is holding up the apex, right, of the ceiling, and it's connecting it to the ground. That's what a pillar does. So imagine you're making a home. No, just leave everything. Just for now, right now we're learning. Okay, we're gonna come to there. Okay. Sorry. We want to create a home for God. So in a home, you have pillars. And what do pillars do? They keep the highest point, the roof, the ceiling. And how does it keep the home as a home? Because it's connected to the lowest point, the ground. That's what a pillar does. So metaphorically, what this means is supernal keser, the supernal crown, which transcends the level of divine wisdom. It transcends the 10 divine attributes, in which Chachma is the highest, right? It is the capital that surrounds, like the crown surrounds the head, the Chachma, the wisdom that you have in your mind. You have something greater than that. That's the crown. So in spiritual terms, that's the divine will of God that is encompassing, that holds up everything. When you think about it, yeah, your will is what holds up anything that you do. Because, for example, if you lose desire for something, guess what? You may have a strong desire to do something, but now you lost the desire. You're not going to do it. So it's what encompasses everything, just like a crown encompasses the keser. So this is the capital, the crown on top of the pillar that now is being held up by the ground, meaning the top is being held up by the bottom. So what does that mean metaphorically? The ground is holding up the top. The divine will of God is being held up by and being fulfilled by, being, you know, being held up by the ground. Well, what's ground is the lowest point. Well, what's the lowest point in the human being? I don't mean lowest in a negative way, acting out, right? I don't mean that. The lowest point in the human uh, capacity is action. The highest point is your intelligence, then your feelings, then your thought, speech. The lowest thing is action, right? Action doesn't take that much great capacity to do, but to think through a thought and to be coherent in the teachings, that's a lot more difficult than like, hey, could you pass me the bottle of water, please? To do that is simple. To speak clearly, or even to be able to concentrate and meditate and to be in your mind more clear is a lot more difficult, a lot more challenging, because it's much more a higher faculty of the individual. So what's holding up the crown of the pillar is the ground. And what's the ground? Action. So here we have a metaphor that bring out the idea that our actions, meaning the act of doing a mitzvah of the 613 rabbinic and 613 biblical and 7 rabbinic, that's holding up the pillar, which is holding up the ceiling, which is holding up the home, creating the home of God. Fascinating. And therefore, to fulfill the will of God, it's necessary to do it in action. That's amazing. Now, the Alter Rebbe takes this metaphor further, that the pillar we're talking about, right, it's a metaphor, is a hollow pillar. And in the hollow pillar, we are ourselves in the act of doing the mitzvah, being connected. So our nefesh, ruach, and neshama is now metaphorically in the hollow of the pillar. We're at the bottom end of it in the sense that we did an action that was a divine will of God. We just gave charity, mindlessly even. Lit your Shabbos candles, mindlessly. Not to suggest you should do it that way. That's not the point here. The point is, even doing it that way, you are now encompassed by the light of this pillar. So now imagine that this pillar is light, the light of God, that is holding up the whole building, the whole home of God through my action, that is connecting the ground to the ceiling, which is, the ceiling is got the crown of the pillar, which is metaphorically the will of God. And through doing the will of God, now I am, in that act of doing it, bound up with God in that pillar of light. I'm in that pillar of light. I've created the pillar of light because it was my action of bringing it to the ground that brought the pillar to the ground, brought the light of God, his will and is now lighting up me in the act of my mitzvah and you in the act of your mitzvah. Wow. And furthermore, what that then does is, and in a sense, you can see what that garment is. That light is now creating, is encompassing you. It becomes your garment. That light be fulfilling the will of God, which then enables us to have the pleasure of the divine. That the thirst that we have, and that, that seeking the pleasure of being when you're thirsty, that we can have the pleasantness of the divine. In other words, in the mitzvah, since I'm in the hollow of the pillar that I've created through the fulfillment of the will of God, right? Connecting the earth to the ceiling, to the highest point, to the lowest point. Being in that pillar of light becomes my protective garment that allows me, right, as a garment, as an interface that allows me to interface with the delight of the divine. Wow. That's something to live with. That's today's Tanya. Folks, a reminder that we are finishing off our matching campaign, which will be starting in about 10 minutes. Our matching campaign will start in 10 minutes, or restart. I mean, starting live again. You can follow us on Tanya Rabbi and various on YouTube, on Facebook. And most importantly, action. Bring it to action. Many of you have given, and I thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that you have given. And if you could then not just give yourself, but give the merit to others and pass it on to others that they can also give, that would be amazing. And God willing, we will reach our goal and beyond our goal of $300,000. We're already at almost 60% of the goal. And thank you very much. Yeah, pass on the word. That would be amazing. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Klein, coming to you from Chabad Zurich and Kedoshim Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya.